Hi there folks, in this video I'm going to explain about how you can create an API, debug your API and schedule API tests using RapidAPI Studio. So firstly, let's go ahead and look at how we can use RapidAPI Studio to create an API that we can share with other people privately. For the sake of this video, I will use the ZooAnimal API I have found on the internet. For that, you need to type this URL in your search bar, which is zooanimalapi.heroku.com. It is a public API where users can request ZooAnimal data in JSON format. So without further ado, let's dig into creating an API. To create an API in RapidAPI Studio, first you need to go and type RapidAPI Studio/studio in your search bar, and then if you haven't signed up to your RapidAPI account, you would first need to sign up. So I'm going to click the sign in button right here, and I can sign up to my RapidAPI account either by providing a work email or a password, or even log in with Google, my GitHub profile, or even my Facebook profile. I'm going to log in with Google, and once it's done, I'll be directed to RapidAPI Studio dashboard. The first step in creating an API in RapidAPI Studio is that you need to click this Add API Project button on the top right corner. Here, I'm going to click this button, and now I'm going to give my API a name. Let's say I'm giving ZooAnimal API. Add some description. I'm going to provide information about different zoo animals, and select the API category. I'm going to select the data category from this drop-down menu. I will keep the team personal and not my organization, and the default do not import option under import data from. Once you are done, click on Add API Project button right here. After adding the API, now you need to click this hub listing from the left sidebar. It will change the page, and now you will see different tabs like General, Endpoints, Gateway, Community, Monetize, and Analytics. By default, the General tab will be opened. You can add details in the General tab like creating a README for your API, updating its logo right here, and so on. Let's scroll down, and you can even change your API project's visibility. At the moment, I'm just sticking to private, but if you want that your API project is visible to everyone, you can just confirm this and change it to public. At the moment, I'm just going to stick it to private. Next, you will see an option to add the base URL of the API. Since I'm adding the ZooAnimal API, so I'm just going to copy this URL and I'm going to paste it here and hit the save button. After hitting the save button, my data has been updated successfully. Next, I'm going to create an endpoint. For this, click on this endpoints tab at the top. It will change the page where now you can see we have options to create a REST or a GraphQL endpoint. Since the API I'm using is a REST API, I will click on creating a REST endpoint. Now we can see more options to name our endpoint, like let's say get random zoo animals, and then give it some description right here. Shows the user different zoo animals every time they call the API. Select the HTTP method. I'm just sticking to the get HTTP method for this video. You can choose any of the provided from this drop-down menu. Write the endpoint path and provide a bunch of other information about it. For this endpoint path, I'm going back to the ZooAnimal API. I'm going to copy this endpoint right here, and I'm going to paste it. Let's delete the additional spaces so the path is valid. At the moment, I'm getting this message of invalid path. And once it's done, I'm going to click the save button. After adding the endpoints, the next is the gateway tab. RapidAPI Studio is full of features that help you secure your APIs. Its prevention against SQL and JavaScript injection attacks feature can automatically compare the paths, parameters, header, and body of all requests against predefined regex patterns. It then blocks the matching request from reaching the server. In this tab, you can just secure your API. You can even provide all your secret headers and parameters in this tab. Right next to the gateway tab, the next step is to share API with other people privately. Since I have just made this API private and not public. So I am going to use this community tab. For this, select the invite users button right here. It will show a field where you can search for a user, organization, and team. Let's go with a user, search a user, and click on send invite after just typing the name of the user. Make sure the person you invite has signed up on RapidAPI, otherwise you will not be able to find them. I'm going to select the user and click send invite, and the invitation will be sent. You can monetize all the APIs you add in RapidAPI Hub from the RapidAPI Studio. For that, right next to the community tab, you have the monetize button. It provides you with two options, that is the public plans and the private plans. As you can see, the public plans further consist of the basic, pro, ultra, and a mega plans. You can customize each of them according to your liking. Like, let's just click this edit and I can change the plan type. I can add a rate limit or a subscription price, and it's up to me. If the user does not find a plan according to their needs, you can create one for them using the private plans. The private plans let you utilize all the accessibility of the public plans. The only difference is you need to invite people to it. For this video, I'm keeping my API free, but you can go ahead and add the price plans. Right next to the monetize tab, you have the API analytics. For each of your APIs, it centrally views, manages, analyzes, and monitors API usage across teams and organization. Here, the API analytics are divided into 5 sections. You can get traffic analytics, user analytics, revenue analytics, logs, and even alerts about your API. And that's pretty much to it. We have successfully created an API using RapidAPI Studio. Next, we're going to talk about debugging your API using RapidAPI Studio. If before or after publishing an API in RapidAPI Hub using RapidAPI Studio, you want to test it to check if it's working as expected, you can do it using the built-in HTTP client of RapidAPI Studio. Let's look at how we can do it. We will continue our previous example of the Zoo Animal API and check its response. Since we've added the Zoo Animal API on RapidAPI Hub, so I'm going to click this View in Hub button right here, and I'll be directed to RapidAPI Hub. This is how my API looks in RapidAPI Hub. Here I can test the endpoint or even copy the code snippets and integrate it in my application. Let's go back and now click Request from the sidebar. It will open the built-in HTTP client where you can test your API. Click on the plus icon under the Request tab. It will open a new request for us. Here we will provide the API endpoint in this bar. Select the HTTP method from this drop-down menu and set up the headers, the query parameters, etc. Since we have published our API on RapidAPI Hub, we can use the RapidAPI endpoint. I'm going back to RapidAPI Hub and I'm going to copy the endpoint and going to paste it here. I'm sticking to the get HTTP method. Now I'm going to provide the headers, the RapidAPI key, and the RapidAPI host. After providing the headers and query parameters, I'm going to click this send button right here, and I'm getting a response, a status code of 200, which is showing that it's working perfectly normal. And this is a simple example where we made a GET request to an API to check the response it brings. You can dabble around the UI to see everything that is available to you, like the headers, the text, the JSON text, image, and so on. The final part of the video is to schedule API test using RapidAPI Studio. Let's continue our Zoo Animal example and this time schedule an API test for our Zoo Animal API that will run every 24 hours. Like before, we have to go to the API that we have to schedule the test for. I'm sticking to Zoo Animal API, and now instead of clicking the request from the sidebar as we did earlier, now I'm going to click test from the sidebar menu. Now click on create test and give the test a name. Since I'm testing whether the API is returning a valid response and not getting an error, I will name the test as is valid response and going to click OK. We can create an API test in 3 ways, that is using the visual editor, the code editor, and automatic test generation. Let's go with the visual editor for now. Click on the add step. It will open a pop-up box. Now select the HTTP GET method from the box. Now fill in the fields like the API endpoint, set up the headers, the request body, etc. Like before, we will use the RapidAPI Hub endpoint for our API because we have published it there. So I'm going back to RapidAPI Hub and I'm going to copy this endpoint, and here I'm going to paste it and click save and run. The save and run will save the test we created and run it for us. Here, let's scroll down, and in the left side, I am getting the execution report, and it's a successful test. Let's move on. It's time to schedule the test we have created. So it runs every 24 hours. For that, you need to click the schedule icon right here on the left sidebar and click add schedule. It will ask you for the schedule frequency, environment, and location. I am going to set the frequency to every 24 hours, the environment to default, and selected, let's say, Singapore as my location. I can even add multiple locations just so you know. And now I'm going to click submit button and your test will be scheduled. That's all, folks. In this video, I have explained how you can create an API in RapidAPI Studio, even debug your API and schedule API tests. If you like this product, I recommend checking out RapidAPI Client for Visual Studio Code, which we also just have launched it. It is full of exciting features and gives you the power to test your APIs inside your favorite code editor. So this is the extension that you are going to install, and I'm going to talk about RapidAPI Client in another video. So what are you waiting for? Go ahead and start using RapidAPI Studio and stay tuned.